Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. My name is Sophie Alcorn. I am the founding partner of Alcorn Immigration Law, and I am so excited to be here today with Idea to IPO. We're here to talk about everything you need to know about COVID-19, the coronavirus, and all of the changes that have been happening lately with immigration. So if you ever have any questions, because this information changes all the time, please do not hesitate to reach out to our team. We're more than happy to assist you. Our contact information will be at the end, but you can always email us at hello@alcorn.law. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rob Lau, for the opportunity to be here with everybody today with Idea to IPO. You provide a very valuable service for tons of founders all around the world, and I really admire the community that you've developed. So just a little bit about ourselves first. My firm, Alcorn Immigration Law, is located in Silicon Valley in Mountain View, California. And our mission is to overcome borders, expand opportunity, and connect the world by practicing compassionate, cutting edge, and rigorous immigration law in service of the betterment of humanity. And, now more than ever in these unprecedented and crazy times, it really matters to have a strong advocate by your side. And so I'm really proud of the service that we provide our clients, and it's what's led to our 95% and higher success rate for some cases. So this is me. I am a certified specialist in United States immigration and nationality law as designated by the California Board of Legal Specialization. It's like a board's certification for a doctor. I founded Alcorn Immigration Law about 5 years ago. I was recently named one of the top 10 immigration attorneys in California, and Alcorn recently won the best immigration law firm for technology startups in California. So we have a lot to celebrate. I'm really proud of our team and all of the thousands of people we have been able to support. You can also find me on my podcast, Immigration Law for Tech Startups, and in TechCrunch, where I author the weekly column, Dear Sophie, which is an immigration advice column. I'm really proud to work with a team of amazing people. My partner, Anita Kumrikian, our associate, Gilberto Orozco Jr., and our associate, Amina Kashari. Our team has been practicing working from home for years. I just never thought I would have to do it, but here we are. And as the information that I'm going to be talking about today really is changing quickly, be sure to check back in with us for updates. We'll always be happy to help point you in the right direction. But yeah, we have several team members who normally work from home, so it's been very educational for me to adapt to what it's like. The way that I started my firm, the story of it all, begins really several generations ago with my great-grandfather. His name was John Grana, and he was an immigrant from Sicily to the United States. And he came across the Atlantic Ocean on a ship, and he went to Ellis Island, and he signed up to come into the country. His family immigrated to Chicago, where he was a young man in the 1920s. And for those of you who know a little bit about US history, that was a period of time in which we had the Prohibition era, so there was no alcohol allowed. But apparently he made his money in entrepreneurship. He was a bootlegger, so he would go into Canada and buy illegal barrels of whiskey and bring them back to Chicago and sell them to all of the lawyers, doctors, judges and policemen in the town. And if you look carefully at the top of this document, it's his certificate of citizenship. You can see that his distinctive marks were that his right arm was bent and his thumb was broken. So thank you, John Grana. Our team has grown a lot. You know, we're all either immigrants or children of immigrants. My mom is from Germany, and so from her, I've been able to see firsthand the grit and perseverance and determination that it takes to uproot your life and start anew in a new country, new culture, and new language. So have a lot of respect for all of the people we serve from all around the world. Really proud of our network. We get to work with really brilliant people. We've been featured in leading global newspapers. I've also won an award from Super Lawyers. And we were recently certified as an official woman-owned business. So for startups and companies that want to improve value to your shareholders by investing in diversity, we are proud to be an officially certified woman-owned business. So today, what I'm going to be speaking with you about are really the top 10 immigration changes that have happened pretty much within the last week or two. Immigration law is always one of those areas that changes super fast. But now, more than ever, it's really one of those crazy times in history where it's changing super fast. So, you know, there's a lot to consider, but I've tried to distill it into the most important things that you as a startup founder or technology professional, either in the United States or in another country around the world, need to know about when you're considering an ultimate move to the United States once this pandemic has passed and we're allowed to go back to our offices. Okay, so let's dive in. So one of the biggest changes is that right now, most of the US consulates and embassies around the world are all closed. They are not issuing visas and they are not issuing green cards. If you were waiting for your interview to happen because you already paid and you had it scheduled, you will be getting a cancellation notice by email. You're not going to lose your money, so don't worry about that. You will be able to book another appointment down the road when they reopen again. The fees that you've paid are going to be valid for a year. Now, there are some provisions for emergency visas and people who need to get visas because it's in the national interest. That's only going to be allowed under certain circumstances. It's not a guarantee. And the State Department is telling us, the immigration lawyers, that these are very rarely going to be approved. So cases in which they might be approved could potentially be to visit a relative who is in hospice care, or if you are working on any technologies that could be in the national interest, such as creating ventilators or working on drug discovery and vaccines. They are going to open again one day. Don't worry, they can't keep them closed forever. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to, so I'm front loading it with like the difficult, scary things, and then I'm going to talk about the happy, good things at the end. So don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom, but I just wanted to get these out of the way. So as you probably know, travel is greatly restricted right now. Most flights are empty, airlines are consolidating passengers, and business travel is only happening for essential purposes. So the countries that are affected include several. And basically, if you're a person who's been to one of these countries in the last 14 days, unless you are a US citizen or permanent resident, you're not allowed to come into the United States. So right now, as of the date of this recording, the countries from which, if you've been to, then your travel would be restricted include China, Iran, the Schengen area of Europe, which encompasses really most of Western and Central and Eastern Europe, everywhere from Portugal over to Slovakia, up to Norway. Recently, they also just added the United Kingdom and Ireland to this list. And it's also important to note that the US-Canada border is closed as well to non-essential traffic. So if it's been more than 14 days, you can still try to come in if you need to. And if you're a citizen or a permanent resident and you've been in one of these countries in the last 14 days, then you're going to be redirected to one of 13 specified airports. So you should keep that in mind as you make your travel plans. So we have a question from the audience. Thank you so much. You're welcome to send in questions as we go along. And this question is about travel. And the individual writes, should employers allow sponsored employees to travel for visa interviews? So at this point, no. Nobody should leave the United States if you're here, because you're probably going to have a very hard time getting back in. All the consulates are closed to visa interviews, so the employee in this situation would not be able to go have a visa interview. And it's really just best to, if this person is already in the United States and they're facing an expiration, this person should either get an extension of their current status or apply to change status to a different category inside the United States. So thank you so much. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to send them along. I'm tracking this as we go through. Okay, so the next thing that you'll need to know is if you are currently in the United States as a visitor on the ESTA visa waiver program. So normally in this program, you're allowed to be in the United States for up to 90 days, 90, and then you have to leave by the end of it. There's no way to stay longer. There's no way to change it to another status typically. But there's a problem that's happening right now for people, which is that sometimes people might not actually be able to leave and go to other countries from the United States because of coronavirus. So they're basically stuck in the US on this status. So if you're in this situation or your friend is, it's really important that they, within 30 days before their expiration, seek assistance from the JFK airport in New York or the Newark airport in New Jersey, because these two airports right now are allowing people to get something called a satisfactory departure, which is a formal process, and it basically helps you out before your ESTA is about to expire. So if you're in the US and you can't leave, this is what you need to do. And they're trying to expand it to other airports in the United States as well. Okay, and then another biggie is that USCIS offices are closed and interviews are being canceled. So this is relevant for people who are currently inside the United States and who are awaiting green card interviews and citizenship interviews at their local, it's called USCIS field office. That's the government agency that decides immigration benefits. So about a week ago, just California, Bay Area was closed, but within the last week, they've closed USCIS nationally. And so all interviews are being canceled right now, at least through April 1st. And we're recording this on March 23rd. They could be closed longer, actually. So it's important to prepare for that. So if you already had a green card interview or citizenship interview that was scheduled for this time period, it's canceled, and you just need to wait for a rescheduling notice to come to you in the mail. And if you're still waiting for your interview, you'll just have to wait and see when they actually schedule it by, whenever normal operations resume. Additionally, there's a system called InfoPass where you can make an appointment to get information about your case, and those all need to be rescheduled as well. That being said, this agency also does a lot of work behind the scenes on green card and visa petitions. And so those offices are called service centers. And at this point, the service centers still appear to be working and processing immigration benefits for future visas and green cards. So you can still apply to come here in the future. And if you think about it, it's actually kind of a good opportunity to do it now. And there's several reasons, but one of them is because it can easily take 3 to 6 months to put together a visa application. So what better time than when you're stuck at home and you can look at through a lot of old documents to find your school records and awards and different accomplishments that you have. Chances are that if you start now, then by the time this is over, you'll be ready to submit everything to USCIS and move forward on your status, and they'll be able to process it for you. Okay, so another big one is this, working from home, sheltering in place. So this affects a lot of people, and it's really important, especially depending on your visa status, how you want to approach this. And it's really important for you to get your employer's attention, because we don't want to do anything that would jeopardize your status or for you to fall out of status with the government. So first of all, and especially with startups, especially with small tech companies, HR might not be prepared to be dealing with all of this. So to the extent that you as an employee can support the process, that's really valuable. So the first thing is that we want to make sure that all the companies have a written work from home policy, and that it's dated and that it's been distributed to everybody in the company who's required to do this. That way, down the road, if there's ever an audit by the government to ask, if they accuse you of working without permission because your home is not listed on your visa application, for example, as an allowed work site, then you'll have this documentation to point to and to excuse the fact that you are working from home. Okay, so next, this is really on a case-by-case basis for the human resources people at your company, but they're going to need to go through and make an individual determination of every international employee, and the visa status that you have, and your work address and your home address, to make a comparison of all the employees and to locate in that comparison any discrepancies that might be red flags for the government. If you have a work permit, then, and you're not a student on F1, then, or you have a green card, you don't really need to worry about this. But this is for people who are on different types of temporary visas. So for example, O visas, H-1B visas, Js, TNs, and we'll be talking about this more in a little bit. So, with your attorney, especially for the H-1B people, we're going to have to figure out if each specific person needs an amendment to the H-1B petition, or if any of the LCAs, which is the labor condition application, if any of those need to be reposted. If you are in the US as a student on OPT or STEM OPT, then you are definitely going to have to notify your school to update the CVIS records that your work location has changed. So don't lose sight of any of those reporting requirements. The other thing to pay attention to is whether any of your job duties are changing as a result of working from home. If you had a very physical job because you were working in a lab and now you're unable to perform your certain work duties. If your job has gone through a material change, then the company might need to ensure that it files an amendment for your job position so that you're able to do the new job and you have work authorization for it. Now, for anybody, and I mentioned this before when a participant had a question about traveling internationally, but if your immigration status is going to be ending soon, don't plan on consular processing at this point. You really want to get an extension or an amendment in the United States. It's really important. Now, if you're in a different country because you got stuck there while you were on a business trip and you want to work remotely for your US company, the companies have to be very careful about people working remotely in other countries because it can have big tax ramifications for the company. So just be aware that that is something else they're going to have to look into. And then something else that I wanted to mention on this topic is just that if you like working from home and your employer likes it, because I imagine we are going to see several changes in our culture as a result of this global transformation. So you may find that you want to work from home more in the future. And it is totally possible to get different types of employment-based immigration visas to allow you to just work from home outright. One of our clients has actually inverted the working from home model. And instead of having team offsites every month, which are like field trips for team bonding, they're having team onsites every month. So the employer requires that everybody live within a 2-hour flight of the San Francisco Bay Area, and they'll sponsor people for immigration to live somewhere in the western half of the United States. And then every month for a week, everybody gathers in one central location. And that's how they make major decisions as a company. So it's a new model that you could consider as things are in play and shifting. Okay, another really important update just came out on Friday. Now, earlier in the week, we were notified and we were aware that premium processing for the H-1B season would be canceled. And that has happened every year for the last several years, so it wasn't that much of a surprise. But on Friday, a few days ago, in order to deal with the pandemic, the government announced that it would be canceling premium processing on non-immigrant petitions and immigrant petitions, so the I-129 form and the I-140 form. And this is used by people who are getting visa extensions or changing from one working visa type to another, or getting sponsored by a company for a green card. So processing is still happening, it's just premium processing is not. So whereas before you could hope for a decision from the government within 15 calendar days, now it could take 3 to 6 months for certain petitions and 7 to 9 months for other petitions. So I anticipate that, in a few weeks, once things return a little bit more to normal, then this will be turned back on and resumed once the workers can work in the government buildings again safely. Okay, now this is some really good news. Now I'm switching to more of the good news. And the backdrop for this is that we recently had something called the public charge rule. And the public charge rule says that if you're likely to get public benefits in the future, or you've gotten public benefits in the past, then you're not allowed to get a visa or a green card in the United States. So this is something that has been in litigation a lot over the last 6 months or so, but it did finally become effective a few weeks ago, just before the virus really started hitting in the United States. So a lot of immigrants have been concerned that they wouldn't be able to get medical support for the coronavirus because of this rule. But rest assured, the government has expanded the exceptions for who is allowed to get medical treatment and will not get penalized for it, to people who are getting testing, medical treatment, and preventative care for COVID-19. So if you think you have coronavirus, if you need to go to the hospital, and even if you need to use Medicaid or other public benefits to pay for it, it's okay. You are allowed to get the medical assistance that you need, and it will not have ramifications for you from an immigration perspective. Okay. Oh, I see that we have another question. Thank you so much. Okay, so this question says, what if my intercompany transferee employee needs a renewal and the home country is one of the countries affected? So yeah, then for all renewals, don't travel abroad right now. Seek extensions within the United States. And I will touch on that a little bit more when we talk about special situations in just a minute. So I also want to mention that the different forms, and including the H-1Bs, because we're about to have the H-1B lottery happen this year, they're getting a little bit, tiny bit easier from a processing perspective. For as long as I can remember, the form that is required for H-1Bs has always had to have a handwritten wet ink signature. No photocopies or digital reproductions were allowed at all. But, given the fact that in a few weeks, about 85,000 people will be sponsored for H-1Bs, this is definitely a decrease on the time that will need to be spent by people, and it's not going to save the fact that you still need a printer. You're supposed to still keep the originals on file, but this will stop you from needing to take an extra trip outside to go to the post office to mail things to the government. So it's something good for public health. Okay. So moving forward, there's additional good news for employers as well, because even though we're all working from home, companies still need to onboard new hires. And in the United States, when you start a new job on the first day as an employee, you're supposed to come in and bring your paperwork. You're supposed to have evidence of your identity and evidence of your ability to work in the United States. So this could be a US passport if you're a citizen. It could be a social security number plus a driver's license. It could be your non-immigrant visa. It could be your work permit. There's many different types of evidence that qualify, and it's always your choice which documents. But there's a requirement for employers that you're supposed to go in there in person and present the original documents for them to look at to see if there's any fraud potentially. So this has been really challenging for companies because they were wondering, if we're all working from home, how are they supposed to start new people working at the job? But on Friday, the government announced that there's a special procedure and you're allowed to verify people's employment authorization documents virtually. So you could have like a Zoom call where the person's holding up their documents and you're saying, yep, that's it. Or they could email them to HR. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. And then there's just some important things to write down in the I-9 paperwork. And that's available on the ICE website. Or if you email me, I can point you in the right direction for those instructions. But that's really, really beneficial for companies because a lot of companies are hiring right now. Okay. So next, there's something called special situations. So this is really valuable for you if you are in the United States and it's very difficult for you because of coronavirus related or travel restriction related reasons. You're going to miss a deadline or you might have already overstayed. If you can explain why it's a result of this special situation, which is essentially equivalent to a natural disaster, then the government will, forgive any of those status violations when it comes to the timing. So basically don't plan to use this, but if you've already had a violation, then it's something that you could consider. Okay, so those are my top 10 things that you need to know about of very recent changes in immigration. But I also would love to take a few minutes to touch on this. So if you're sheltering in place, but you are dreaming of another place in which to shelter, what are your methods of coming to the United States? So as I've alluded to, there are many types of non-immigrant visas. And in my podcast, Immigration Law for Tech Startups, we have several episodes that go into all of these visa categories in depth and more. So please check that out, Immigration Law for Tech Startups. And so there's lots of visa types, and it seems like a lot of letters and numbers, but I'll go through them briefly and tell you about each one. And then at the end, there's a way for you to get a chart that will break it down and give you a little bit more information. And a lot of people say that's a great starting place for them. So the H-1Bs we mentioned, those are visas for professional employees who are working at a company. They're typically valid for up to 3 years at a time and usually 6 years total. It does require a company to sponsor the person, and there's a limit. There are 85,000 total H-1Bs available every government fiscal year. And so basically every March and April, there's a lottery to decide who of all of the petitioners will get selected for their employees to get the visas. So that's H-1Bs. We just closed the electronic registration period last week, and where we're at now is that we are awaiting the lottery selection, and then after the selection happens, everybody will have a chance to actually submit their petitions to the government. For all of those petitions, I would highly encourage you to consider seeking a change of status in the United States as opposed to consular processing, which is where you would need to go back to your country of residence to seek a visa. Sometimes there are quite good reasons to do consular processing, such as, once you have the actual visa in your passport, it's usually multiple entry and you can come in and out for a period of years, so it's very convenient for international travelers. But at this point, it's really not safe to leave. You might not be able to come back. So therefore, if you qualify, I would highly recommend that you try to get a change of status instead. Okay, so next up, we have the E2 visa. And this visa is for investors and their employees. If the owners of the company are from a country that the United States has a treaty with. So there are many countries on this list. Notably, India and China are not on the list. Probably not surprisingly, Western Europe, Japan, Australia are all on the list. Also, interestingly, Iran is on the list. So it's not based on a modern law. It's just based on historical treaties that have been signed over the last 200 plus years between the United States and different countries around the world that permit commerce and investment to happen. So if you plan on starting a new company in the United States and you're a citizen of one of these countries, you can use the E2 visa to get permission to come into the US for you to live here and work here and grow and run your company. And you can also bring any employees you'd like who have essential skills, who share the same country of citizenship as you and the company. So that's the E2. The TN is for citizens of Mexico and Canada who are professionals. There's a list of about 50 occupations. And if you have a job offer for a job on that list, then you can apply. A lot of Canadians typically will go back to Canada and just do this at the airport or at the border before popping back into the US. But at this point, I don't advise it because you might not be able to just pop back into the United States. So the TN is one that can take a few months to request by mail within the United States. But if you want to stay here, that would be a better option at this point. Now, another type of visa is called an O1 visa. And this is for people who are of extraordinary ability. So if you're a startup founder in another country, or you've had success as a business person, this is something that you could consider applying for to work at a company here, maybe even your own startup. So this is a great pathway. And at the end, we have a special offer that I will be telling you about if you might be such a person of extraordinary ability. Now, another type of visa is a J1. This can be to work for up to 5 years as a researcher at a company in the US. It could also be for a training program for employment, which can last up to 18 months at a time. There are F1 visas for students. If you're from the countries of Chile or Singapore, you could potentially qualify for a professional work visa like an H-1B, called an H-1B1. It has much lower demand, so a much higher chance of getting it. And if you're Australian and you're a professional from Australia, you could potentially qualify for an E3 visa as well. So there are many, many options. And if you're, burrowed up in your flat in Italy or China and you can't go outside, and all of this is making you realize that your life dream is to really move to the San Francisco Bay Area and raise some capital for your company or expand it over here, and you have your idea and you want to IPO, definitely consider it. Now is a great time to lay the groundwork for one of these options. Okay. Now, the next thing I wanted to touch on is the H-1B timeline, because there is that lottery that I was mentioning. Right now, we do think that things will continue to go smoothly for people who are in the current lottery cycle. We will see. But so far, all the indications are that USCIS is trying to push this forward as normal. So just in general, we're in the period at the end of March where we are awaiting the selection of the H-1B beneficiaries. Looking forward, for whoever is selected, then during April through June, that will be an opportunity to prepare and submit the full petition. Sometime over the summer, we'll start getting decisions from the government, and we will also start receiving any requests for evidence. And then October 1st is always the first possible start date. And if you didn't get selected, then probably next fall or winter is the time to line up your offer and talk to an attorney, make sure that your company is committed to the process for you. And then in February, employers who are new to the system can make their accounts. And in March, first few weeks of March, next year probably is when they will redo the electronic registration system again, and then we will start the cycle anew. So, the premium processing portion has been canceled for this year, but aside from that, it seems like we are still on track for this annual timeline for H-1Bs. Here's what I wanted to share with you. This is the list of the E2 treaty countries. So if you are a citizen of one of these countries and you want to start a business in the United States and you don't have a green card yet and you're going to own at least 51, ideally would be at least 51% of your company, then you can apply for a visa. And it generally takes an investment of about $100,000 to $200,000 of your own money into the U.S. company, and you have to be willing to spend 30 to 60% of it before the visa interview. However, it is also possible to do this on the basis of having a startup funded by U.S. VCs and angel investors. So there's multiple ways to get this. And then, while we're on the topic of sheltering in place, if you love the one you're with and you're in the U.S., you could get married. And for good faith marriages, it is possible to get permanent residence by marrying a U.S. citizen. In the United States, this is called the adjustment of status process. And it probably, well, I have no idea how long it's going to take after this week. We've seen very shortened processing times at local USCIS offices recently, in the order of 3 to 4 months for these types of green cards. However, with the offices closing, they will not be able to have the interviews for a while. But if you want to go down this path, it's really great to start off the process sooner rather than later, because you'll be getting a work permit through the process, and that has very low limitations. You can basically use it to be self-employed or work at any company that you'd like. So I know with this startup crowd that everybody wants to succeed based on their own merit, which I totally respect. However, I would also just encourage you that if this is an option you qualify for, you give it serious consideration. Given a good faith marriage, it's a lot easier than some of the other immigration avenues that we've discussed. Okay, now there are also ways to get green cards through businesses. There are several categories, and some of them involve testing the US labor market to see if there are any US workers you can hire, but not all of them do. There are different green cards depending on your qualifications. It's like many pathways up the mountain. You know, the mountain has the same peak, which is being a permanent resident and being allowed to live and work in the United States indefinitely. But each path up is based on you having different skills, different sponsorship, different credentials. So, you know, that could be based on the fact that you're a person of extraordinary ability, like having an O1 visa. It could be if you're conducting research in a company that has several researchers. You could be a multinational manager or executive transferring from one branch of a company to another. You could be in the national interest, or you could simply be an employee with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and a company is sponsoring you. And these options are available whether you're in the United States or outside the United States. And depending on where you're from, this whole process could take anywhere from 2 years to decades. So if you have the opportunity to proceed with one of these options, now is a fantastic time to do so. Okay, so if one day you're dreaming about getting US citizenship, here are the different elements so that you can file them away and remember what you need to do. So first of all, you have to have your green card for at least 5 years. And if you're married to a US citizen the whole time, you actually only need to have it for 3 years. So it gets sped up if you are in a good faith marriage with a US citizen. You have to spend at least half your time in the United States. You need to be a person of good moral character. And ultimately, there's an interview and a test and an oath ceremony. So that is the citizenship process. Now, if you would like additional information about all of the options we've discussed and more, you are welcome to contact us. We have this options chart that's been featured in TechCrunch and that a lot of startup founders from around the world have told me is very helpful to them in mapping out their options. And so this will be available for you, and I'll tell you how to get it in just a few slides. And what I'd like to point out about it is that it breaks it down by category, by temporary visas versus permanent green cards. And then it also talks about who's eligible, what are the steps, and what are the benefits. So why might you want this option? Okay, and so here is how you can learn more. That number I was saying to text in order to get the options chart and our TechCrunch article, what everyone at a startup needs to know about immigration. You can text Alcorn, ALCORN, to 31996 from your US cell phone, and you will be able to download these infographics and also subscribe to our newsletter. You can also subscribe to our podcast, Immigration Law for Tech Startups, which is available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Every Tuesday, I have new columns coming out on TechCrunch from the Dear Sophie Immigration Advice column, so you can always reach out for that. And we're also quite active with updates on social media, so you can follow either me or the firm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And as a special offer that I wanted to share with the Idea to IPO audience today, is if you think that you're a person of extraordinary ability and who might be in the national interest for the United States to have here, we'd love to support you with your journey. And this is a great time to really dive. This is one of the more document labor intensive types of cases. So we have a good opportunity now with shelter in place and social distancing to spend some time working on gathering together different documents. So if you reach out and mention that you attended this webinar, we're currently offering free consultations through Friday the 27th of March. If you complete your questionnaire by then, I'll be more than happy to evaluate it on a complimentary basis and give you some feedback about what you might be able to do to strengthen your application. If you ever need any help, you're always welcome to call us 855-546-0015, or you can email us hello@alcorn.law. And our team of attorneys is standing by. We'd love to support you, and we'd love to talk to you about your situation, where you're at, and where you want to be. So with that, Rob, I thank you so much, and I thank IDEA to IPO as well. It's a great organization, and we really appreciate the opportunity to provide this valuable content to your members. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate it. Happy working from home. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you so much, and keep in touch and have a great day. Bye.